Hello and welcome to another ravishing bicycle component review as delivered by your favorite YouTuber, me. Today, as the title and the subsequent opening clips of this video suggest, we're here to answer one very important question of the Syntace Flatforce stem. Does it suck? Now, I want to make it clear that I understand that the job of a stem is merely a humble one, and that the majority of reviews typically fall into the line of, it's a stem, it clamps the bars, it clamps the steer tube, it does its job, adequate. To some authors or creators diving so deep into it that they're just kind of full of anecdotal benefits that really are only key to that particular reviewer. Hardly helpful to anyone thinking about actually buying a stem when there's not a whole lot that you need to know anyway. I think we can do better. Now for this review, I've got three objects here that I'm going to compare to each other. Now, normally when I'm searching for a stem, the goal almost always is just to achieve simple adequacy. This is a crappy, old, scrap piece of wood that I've written on for a past video that for some reason I've held on to. I think it might be pine. I don't know anything about wood. This is just the stock stem off of my old felt F5. And this, of course, is just the subject of the review, the Syntace Flatforce in size 66. Based on that, there's a number of categories to consider when you want to determine whether or not a product sucks or not. And they are as follows: price, weight, machine quality, positioning, its ability to problem solve for you. Okay, category one, price. Normally when I'm on the hunt for a stem, the price that I'd like to pay is very similar to the price that I would like to pay for this scrap piece of birch. And the beauty behind stems is they're kind of a fit piece. They're a piece that everybody needs to change out so that they can swap to something that's going to get their fit better. And then they end up with all these stock bits that they either want to get rid of because they don't want it in their toolbox, or they're looking to make a tiny little bit of money to recoup the cost of a stem that they just bought. Generally, you can get a hold of one of these kind of for the price of one of these. Unfortunately for our review piece, this was very expensive and it hurt my feelings a lot to spend full retail on it. Not very adequate. Very sucky. As an adequate and non-suck product would pertain to weight, adequate and non-sucky stem should weigh less than this scrap piece of pine that has 3 screws in it for some reason. That's 147 grams. For the piece of pine with 3 screws in it. Next up, the hopefully adequate stem. 144 grams, adequate. The review piece, the Syntace Flatforce. 130, 129. Definitely adequate, definitely not sucky in comparison to the piece of pine. Next up is machine quality. That is to say, how is the quality of the machining of the threads and how do they integrate with one another? Do they spin freely? Do they allow you to get the proper torque onto the clamp area so that your bar or your stem does not slip while you're riding? Therefore you remain safe and therefore you know that it is built to spec. There's a reason why these torque numbers are on here. You're supposed to follow them. I don't know if you've ever used a very cheap stem that has wildly coarse threads, but I don't think 7 Newton meters is actually enough to start the thread and start tightening it. If you used a torque wrench on it, your faceplate might fall off. So all that said, what's considered a form of adequacy? Well, that's simple. It should require less torque and less force to move the bolts in your faceplate or the steer tube clamp area than it does to take a screw out of a piece of... Is this pine? Anyway, this is not particularly difficult, though there is a fair amount of resistance. So how are we with our suspect adequate stem? Well, I can move each bolt freely just with my fingers, so I think we're good here. Adequate. And here we have the review piece, the Syntace Flatforce. I have a feeling that this should feel probably the same. No better, no worse than what our adequate stem is. Certainly better than what the piece of birch or pine or whatever it is that spins very freely. No problem. You'll be able to get the appropriate torque on all of the clamp area on this. Adequate. Does not suck. Now the penultimate category in this review is positioning. Now this should be an easy win for both of the stems, considering a piece of wood is hardly the appropriate piece of equipment to try and attach your handlebar and your steer tube together. As a matter of fact, no effort in the world is going to allow the handlebar to actually mount to here. Certainly not at the forefront of my recommendations. If these don't turn into dust when you go to put them on the bike, they basically win and are adequate in this part. Also, positioning is like weirdly objectively subjective. This stem might not be better than this for you, or this one might be better for you than this one. It really depends on where you want to be positioned on the bike. There's a lot more options when you buy new. You get to pick. Yeah, alright. Positioning wise, I am satisfied. Though, of course, as I look at it from this side profile, I can't help but feel myself wanting to have an extra 40 millimeters sticking out the front. Though, I understand that the trend has been to go to a shorter, more controllable stem, and that is the trend that I followed suit with by going with a 66 millimeter stem. Now, the last and most important category, especially in my case and especially with what I have just done, is the problem solving. Now, when it comes to bicycles, a scrap piece of wood is only so helpful with problem solving. Again, the bar for pretty well any stem to be adequate over that is fairly low, but I wanted the metaphor to continue into this category, so here we are. This stem exists. It does a much better job of problem solving your handlebar to steer tube connection than a piece of wood ever would. Though adequate for most applications was not adequate enough for this application. And recalling your memory to probably 30 seconds ago, you saw how short the steer tube was on this, and a stem with a stack height of 40 millimeters was not going to cut it. This problem solving little bastard here, it's got a stack height of about 28 millimeters, and its minimum insertion is 24. Lo and behold, I had more steer tube than that, and I actually had to run a spacer underneath this stem. Thank goodness for that. That is a very expensive Fox factory problem solved. And that most definitely is more than adequate, and a 100% does not suck. So to recap, 4 out of 5 categories, this thing earned a grade of adequate and not suck. Number 1 category, it did fail at being way too expensive, though I think there's some bonus points for salvaging the cut steer tube on this fork. The price of this far outweighs the price of this. So determination of the Syntace Flatforce stem. It does not suck, but you probably don't need it unless you want it, or in my case, really need it. Now it's just time for the mountain bike trails to open up again. Okay, if you want to see more stuff like this, consider supporting the channel through Patreon or buy all of your stuff through the Amazon links below. That includes like toilet paper, groceries, stuff for your baby, all that good stuff. Proceeds, when you go through any of those links, come to this channel to support it financially, and it allows me to do stuff like this. Keep watching, subscribe. Yeah, what are all the things people say at the end of their videos to entice people to subscribe? Anyway, I've been trying really hard to post every single day if I can. I think I've done a pretty good job of it. I've missed 2 days in April so far, but 17 or 18 days in. Good track record. I'd like to keep it clean. I'd like to keep it good. Stick around and we'll see you tomorrow.